I've only read it once.
I think Lewis hasn't.
Lewis hasn't.
Sorry,
Okay.
Lewis hasn't.
You're on,
Lewis,
Rosser.
read the mission.
Sure.
That's a tough one. I mean,
I have
Good evening.
like you were telling me the other day.
Good evening and welcome to the September 24th meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I'll take a call for approval of the agenda.
I vote we approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Moved by Benkin, seconded by Rosser. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Director Rosser, will you please read the mission statement?
Sure. The mission of the Ames Community Schools is to ensure that all learners develop the knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and personal esteem necessary to grow in and shape a changing society.
Thank you very much. And tonight we have a special opportunity to recognize the Ames Home Builders Association for a donation to the district.
Thank you so much. Is this on? Okay. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this, and I'm sure that you've heard my many speeches about us growing our career technical education program, and so I think we're equally excited for this donation. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. So the Ames Home Builders Association has really expanded our efforts in the last couple of years to include more people into the trades and grow an interest into the building trades, so that way young students realize that there are viable careers that have a financial well-being for the future ahead in the careers and in the trades. So last year we had dedicated to donate proceeds from ticket sales from the Parade of Homes to the Ames School District. And this year, we expanded it to neighboring schools as well. So reaching out to Ballard, Nevada, Boone, Gilbert. And so we started a grant program. So if there are other things that the Ames school wants, now we have a fund available to tap into those resources.
Thank you so much.
And we appreciate one of our industrial tech teachers, Mr. Kent Johns, for being here tonight to join us in accepting this. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I will go ahead and read our statement on discussion items and public forum. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. And our first discussion item on the agenda this evening is a rebranding presentation. And Eric Schmidt is here with a few guests.
All right, thanks everyone. So I interact with our brand virtually every day. And over the last 2 years, and I love our brand. I mean, the signage of this is awesome. That represents our district as a whole. And one thing that I've gathered over the last year is our Ames High brand is missing a couple key things. One of which are brand standards, and we'll get into what that is and how it will benefit us. And the other one is proper file formats that we can use across a number of platforms. And without those things, it's difficult for us to have true ownership of our Ames High brand. I think we see Ames High everywhere, but it's tough to control. And so really before we start to put thousands of dollars into signage and branding in our new high school, I thought it was important to evaluate our current Ames High brand, get those brand standards and proper file formats, and really take a look at how can we bring more excitement around the Ames High brand. And so tonight, to present, we have Andrea Love and Adam Jensen from Letterman Creative. I've reached out to them to discuss what are some options that we have as far as the Ames High brand. And I know that branding and rebranding and changing things can be scary and complicated at times. And so maybe we take that word away and we call it more of like an assessment of our brand, or a retooling or a refreshing of our brand, because I think moving into the future, and especially with this new high school on the horizon, I think we have a lot of excitement that we can bring to Ames High just through our brand. So I'm going to kick it over to them, and they will kind of go through their process, which personally I found pretty fascinating and pretty awesome as far as how we go through this. So, should be.
Hi. Thanks for having us. I get the easy part of this. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background, and then he's going to go. So, my name's Andrea Love, and this is Adam Jensen, and we co-own Letterman Creative together. And Letterman is actually the sister company of C3 Marketing, which I own and run. Adam used to work there, but this is now his passion and focus. But C3 Marketing actually was born of my passion for doing marketing for nonprofits. And so we have a lot of experience with branding and working with nonprofits, which includes boards and community members and committees and all the fun stuff. But it was through C3 Marketing where we started our experience with branding for schools. Adam's going to go through a few examples of different schools that we've worked with, but we were hooked after the first one, and we've really worked to come up with a process that helps us to integrate the community, the schools, the students, the board, everyone in the whole process. So like Eric said, it becomes less scary and a lot more exciting. And the whole point is to help the schools become more identifiable, more unique, and their own brands. Our process really is, well, it's not simple, but it takes in a lot of different ways of doing things that, like I said before, includes different groups that we feel really should have a voice in your school brand. So it's important to us that we're capturing different audiences' points of view, and especially gaining community buy-in. We never come in and say, here's your new pretty picture, go use it, or never even what. We're getting their input, and history is a big part of that. Learning from what the schools have gone through, what they stand for now, and bringing that all together into something that everybody can be proud of. Obviously, we partner with the school boards and staff to ensure smooth brand rollout. Once it's done, no matter what's done, different schools have different ways that they want to roll it out. Some want to make a big bang and say, here's the new brand. Others just kind of want it to be a smooth process. It also depends on what all is done with the brand. We're special in that we're employing creative and public relations people in the process. My background is PR. Adam focuses really on design and the creative process. I bring a focus on that community and listening and talking and communicating with people about what's going on to take away that fear of change, while he's focusing really on the quality of the brand and the deliverables in the end. And then, you know, what's designing branded materials that provide new or increased revenue streams possibilities. We've seen through the schools that we've worked with, but that once you do have this brand that you're really proud of, they then want to have it everywhere. And, you know, that includes signage, apparel, things like that, that can in turn return some revenue to the school itself. I'm done.
Okay. Now we get to dive into some of the pretty pictures. I've told Andrea she can kick me if I talk too long. Because I do like to talk about this stuff. So some of the questions that we see a lot working with schools kind of fall into similar categories, right? And a lot of these questions that we see is your school logo truly yours? You know, I don't think that's the case here, but a lot of schools are borrowing logos from professional teams or collegiate teams. Is your school branding clean and modern? That's a real problem, especially in the digital world, where, just like Eric's talking about, file formats, crisp, clean drawings, communicative logos are needed. And then, is your school culture reflected in your mascot? A lot of times, you know, a lot of schools are working with older logos, even from the 70s, different things like that. Does that really represent who you are? And then, are there bigger changes on the way, which I think you guys are experiencing as well? There's new facilities, whether that's equipment or fields or buildings. So we have some examples here of some schools that we've worked with. So along those lines, is your school logo truly yours? We worked with Okoboji, Iowa. They got a cease and desist from Oregon and Nike. And you'd kind of say, well, why would Nike and Oregon care about little old Okoboji, Iowa? But you can see exactly why. And so they were kind, I think, to Okoboji and said, within a year and a half, you need to prove that you're moving towards something else. And so we were able to take this and go towards something that remodeled it a little bit, but added to it and took a more collegiate approach to it and added different parts and pieces so that the brand can have life beyond, 5 to 10 years. I mean, really, you're looking for something that lasts a long time. And so one way to do that is to make sure you're not just plopping the same logo on the same thing every time, and you maybe only got 1 or 2 marks. You really have to think through the system and how it's going to work. So you can start to see how we break those parts and pieces apart and start to use them in different ways. And it's always nice to see these logos on a flat piece, but then we always kind of try to put them on something that makes them come to life, and you can start to see how the brand takes shape on different things throughout the school. Is your brand clean and modern? We got to work with Johnston in Des Moines, and you can kind of see they had a dragon here from the 70s and a Fire J that they used maybe from the early 2000s. But they had similar problems, files that didn't work. And when that starts to happen, you start to all of a sudden start to see different dragons start appearing, and people or groups just like to bring in what works for them and what they like. And especially if you have something that might look a little older like this dragon, somebody, without doubt, somebody's going to find something that they like that's more modern and just start using it. And as soon as it's in your system, it can start spreading. And that's what really kind of creates chaos, especially when it comes to branding. So we were able to take those elements and kind of create a new modern look and really bring that dragon to life, bring that Fire J into it. This is kind of what we call a master mark. So it's kind of your main mark, and then everything can kind of branch off from it. And you can start to see some of these other pieces, like Summit is an elementary, and so you're branding the feeder schools as well. You can see the full breadth of Johnston Dragons. Those eyes are kind of a fun piece to break off, and it's relating to that dragon, but it's not exactly the same thing, And then again, just kind of making it come to life in different ways, and you can see different applications there. Is your school culture reflected in your mascot? We get to work with Charles City. And similar type thing, they were ready for a new high school, and they lovingly referred to this guy on the left here as their flaming meatball. And it's nice to look at it. Yeah, and it's supposed to be a comet. But just to reinforce that we don't try to come in and just change everything. You know, as much as it is easy for us to look at this and kind of say, well, I'm not in love with that, there was a whole lot of people that were in love with it. So you have to be very mindful of that, because there's tradition in every community, and we respect that. So then you take the mark on the right, and that's probably more of a late 90s, early 2000s look as well, and then we were able to go more towards a modern look and feel. So again, just the solutions that we kind of came up with, and you can start to see how that brand takes shape. And then really almost every school we've worked with has bigger changes on the way, and it's usually the facilities and buildings that are coming. And so we got to work with Valley down in West Des Moines as well. And they, very similar things, they were ready for change, kind of in their building phase. I think they made it through that. But they just took a survey of their hallways, and I think they were known for that Valley V and that tiger paw. But once you walk the hallways, you could see there was all kinds of tigers, all kinds of paws, all kinds of different things that you just, if you're not paying attention to it, you're just not going to see it. And then when you do see it, it looks like chaos, right? And you're kind of in the boat of, oh gosh, how are we gonna fix this? And so they weren't, they kind of rode the line of, is it truly representing them? Because they've got a couple logos here like Virginia Tech, and the paw mark was actually a Clemson mark. They weren't doing anything wrong, but they were paying money every year to license those logos. So why pay that money when you could invest in yourselves and own something going forward? So then we were able to go to the Valley logo that maybe you've seen in the last few years, but they wanted to introduce a tiger. They wanted to keep the V. They wanted to keep the paw, but revamp it so it was their own. So you can kind of see the new paw that we developed, and that it was a part of, the great thing is when there's kind of no rules or chaos, you get to make the rules. So, we kind of at least attached the paw to the feeder schools in elementary and junior highs, and it was kind of an aspirational thing to be the tiger when you're in high school. So, again, they had all their feeder schools that we branded as well, had some fun with, that V in the brow, and having some custom marks. I think that's another thing you can see. I think there's other places that can do something really sharp and good looking for you, but it might be a little cookie cutter. It's not custom. What we like to explore, the traditions of the community, the traditions of the school, and what are those elements that we can bring into it that really make it your own, and then everybody feels a sense of pride as a part of it. And then quickly just wanted to dive into this. This is really kind of the second phase of your branding in an avenue that we're going down. Once you develop these brands, we obviously want you to trademark them, and that just protects you with any vendor that you work with. But really, we want to then in turn become a vendor with you and really create a new revenue stream for you through apparel. So our product is called a Letterman Locker, and we've been working with Johnston a little bit to get this established and help launch it. And really, you might be saying, well, what is it? And it's an e-commerce site, and we negotiate with the district on hopefully a higher revenue stream for you for royalty fees. And then we become a retail shop, and really it's that exchange of, we want to be a shop button on your district site. So that it gives it instant credibility in that the school is behind it, and it gives it instant traffic because everybody's going to that district site for whatever news they might need. But it's really intended to have a lot of clothing styles, a lot of different gear, and the model is 24/7, 365. I think everybody's used to, or getting more used to, an Amazon-style experience when they're shopping online. We can't promise that, but I think what schools are traditionally used to are pop-up shops or quick ordering for 2-3 weeks, and then but waiting for that product to arrive, different things like that. So it's just a way to provide gear and apparel year-round, really. So, and then the part on us, we become the retail shop, so we manage the store, we take care of all the ordering, sourcing, and we work with the school district on designs and different things like that. And again, this is kind of a second phase. We would probably come back and do a much more in-depth presentation to you. Really, tonight's about branding, but just wanted to show you some things. What is unique? Well, we kind of continue the brand. We call it giving the brand a brand voice. And this is just a good example of Johnston. We didn't necessarily, it's probably not a common term. What is a group of dragons called? Well, we didn't really know, so we did some research. Well, a group of dragons is called a thunder. So a thunder of dragons, you can play with that thunder and rain and the night and storms, and you just build that world around dragons, and we can do that for all kinds of things. So then it's a whole system that you own. It's not just these logos, it becomes a whole brand. So just to give you a taste of some of the marketing that we bring to it, we like this kind of a style of imagery. You see the students, you have some fun with some pop culture references like Mother of Dragons for Game of Thrones fans. But you find those ways, and we're very serious about the copyright stuff. So the Mother of Dragons thinks that's not copyrighted. So and then we sell them in collections. So on the left you kind of see the one thunder and rain, and just the playfulness that you can have with some of those sayings, so you're just not producing whatever kind of shirts and apparel that nobody really wants to buy. And then you're getting into what we call a sideline collection that is appealing to parents and teachers and staff, and it's maybe a little bit nicer gear or things like that. And then on the left you have what we call the Mascot Collection, so in the case of Johnston it's called the Dragon Collection. And so that's your school colors. Those are those logos that we develop for the school. And then you get to kind of choose your own adventure, if you want a gold shirt, a black shirt, and then you choose your favorite logo, things like that. So we can bring that shopping experience to the store and just create a new revenue stream, really, that's interesting to schools. We've got a lot of positive response to it. So just a taste of that. If we made it to that stage, obviously we'd come back and present a whole lot more. So really, that's what we have.
I think one thing that we didn't get too far into that I'll just cover real quickly is the process that we go through with the schools for the branding. And that is really through forming, and we've talked in more detail with Eric, so he knows this, but forming a work group from beginning to end of the process, where in the beginning we're really gathering feedback and listening. I mean, that's really what kind of is important in this process, because you're getting all the people who are passionate about the school and the brand, bring them in and say, what is important to you? What does the school, or what does the school district mean for you? What are words that are associated with it? That sort of thing. Really getting their feedback, and then moving forward with what does that mean for the brand? What changes are needed? What is done? Coming back with some designs, meeting with the same group to go through this. And this group is made up of students, parents, staff, there's usually a board member or two on it. It's whoever, and we work with Eric to figure out who are the people that really should be in that room and need to be heard, and making sure they're representatives from the different groups there. And in the end, you end up with something that these people really have had a voice in. I have said repeatedly that the students blow me away every time. I remember myself back in high school, and I don't think I said more than 3 words the whole time, but these kids come in there and they're so passionate about it, and they really have valuable feedback that really does. I can tell you parts of each of those designs that they specifically brought into it, and that's the really fun part. In the end, you end up with something that everybody has had a voice in, and they are able to go out then and say, this is why we did it. This is how it ended up this way. And yes, I was involved in it, so that it's not a surprise to a lot of people. And there are people who love it and are passionate about it in the end. So that's an important piece of that we kind of skipped over. But, I just wanted to make sure that came across as well.
Good. I have a few more bullet items. I took notes during the presentation. One thing that we have, which is actually similar to West Des Moines, is that, you know, we have a district brand and logo that we did in conjunction with the city probably about 5-6 years ago. We're not suggesting that that go away. I mean, this is, you know, our school district brand, but oftentimes, and Valley is one of those situations where, you know, the high school is kind of, you know, your flagship of schools as far as activities and athletics, and they need their own brand, and they currently have it. One of the things that I would really like to get out of this is that master mark, and so we get that A high, which I think is fairly consistent in a lot of our stuff, but one thing that isn't consistent is if we want to bring in part of a cyclone emblem into that. You know, I've walked through Ames High and I think I've seen a total of 4 different ones within the building, and a lot of it's just pulled from Google. You type in cyclone logo and it's like, well, that's what I got, so I'm going to use that, and I've seen that all over the place. So this would solidify that. And then one of the things, if we do get to that point about the apparel part of it, is, you know, I've talked with Andrea and Adam already about whether they would be able to work within this brand as well. And so I really am actually pretty excited about being able to bring the apparel component to our middle school and elementary schools as well, so they can get some additional exciting stuff, you know, if we do get to that point. But I think we would have this, kind of, for me, it started off as an Ames High project and now is kind of expanding. How can we solidify our school district brand across all of our buildings? So that's all I have.
Questions for any of them?
I just want to thank you. I think it's exciting, and I'm very supportive of it moving forward. I think we have an opportunity here as a community to really re-envision what our brand looks like, so I'm very supportive.
I appreciate you coming forward with this, Eric, and I'm with Luke. I'm excited to see what the opportunities may be here, and it's a great time with all of the positive momentum building with the design and construction of our high school. So great timing, and I'll look forward to upcoming discussion on it. So thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. We appreciate the information. Any comments from the public on the rebranding presentation?
Hello, my name is Amy Edwards, 1204 Arizona Ave. I think just having listened to this presentation, I myself got extremely excited about this, and I'm speaking now on behalf of the PTO at Sawyer, but I think in conjunction at the elementary buildings. This is a part where I think each building, elementary building, as a PTO, we struggle because we truly want to create spirit for our families and our students, and in doing so, I think there's things that are same, things that are different, and I think if we could have a running thread where we're all on the same page, this continuity is there, and then it could look a little different, and then that price point could be different, but we're still going to maybe allow some of that revenue to come to our buildings, and that again will help us support our teachers, our classrooms, and our students. So I really encourage
you guys to really look into this and maybe move on something, because again, I think that would create continuity and community within the PTO aspect when we're trying to do things in this area. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, we will go ahead and go to the next item under discussion items, which is the June, July, and August financial reports. Chris.
Good evening. Last Monday, the 17th, all of our financial reports for the year were due. The 3 major financial reports. I actually certified them on Friday before, so I was very glad to have that out of the way before the weekend. So I wanted to update the board where we ended financially for the month of June, and some of the changes that got made to our certified budget. And I know that's really small. Let's see if I can. So for the year, we collected 101.0% of our estimated revenues, while spending 97.1% of our estimated expenditures. If you recall, when we did the budget amendment, I did amend a little bit because we'd gotten an audit comment for missing one of the 4 major control areas the last couple of years, so I wanted to make sure we were in good shape. So that's a little less. I'm usually more in the 98-99% range. So we ended the year with a fund balance of $3.3 million. That's down $1.5 million. Of that amount, $1.4 million, or just under $1.4 million, is held in grant funds, and $1.9 million is unreserved, undesignated fund balance, which leaves us with a fund balance reserve percentage of 6.2 and a solvency ratio of 3.7. That's a little lower than we want to be, and if you recall during budget, we did take action to correct that. We maximized the maximum cash reserve levy that we were allowed by law. So I anticipate that coming up. The School Budget Review Committee recommends a solvency ratio between 5 and 10%, so we're a little below what they recommend. We didn't have any cash flow problems for the summer, though. We made it through with cash. So I anticipate that coming up in the next few years. Based on the results of this year for fiscal year 20, we'll be able to levy, I think, $8.7 million in cash reserve. So we'll be able to get that cash reserve up pretty quickly. We did not exceed the statutory budget in any of the 4 areas, so we're good there. The only other thing was the negative lunch balances. They did go down at the end of June from $57,163 to $51,017. The main reason for that was that we had a lot of donations from graduating seniors, and we also sent out letters in compliance with the board policy for any family that owed more than $100, and that resulted in some people coming in and paying on their accounts. So that is the reason for that. And then, of course, we don't have any more accrue after the end of school, so anything that's paid on the accounts, there's nothing offsetting that the other way. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on June. Oh, the only other thing I would mention for June, and it's an item for the for later in the board meeting on the special ed deficit. I had levied enough cash reserve in fiscal year 18 to cover the amount of the special ed deficit. So when you saw our fund balance go down by 1.5, that was the structural deficit within our budget. So if you're levying enough cash to cover your special ed deficit, which you can't control, then if your expenditures are exceeding your revenue, that is your structural deficit. And that's what we corrected during budget this year. Remember, if we had the new revenue and it had to go towards all the expenditures that we had added the last 2 years.
Chris, while you mentioned that, I did actually have notes to ask you about that, because I see that that's an action item. I think that's number 13. But number 14 also seems to be a provision for the LEP fund. Is that included in the 1.9 million? Is that already accounted
Yes, except
for?
that has been consistent every year, so that's pretty much built into our budget. It has never gone more than that 430 or whatever thousand it is. So that's pretty much built into our budget. We know that we're going to exceed our ESL revenues, and then we get spending authority on the back end that we can levy the cash for. So I don't worry about that much. I don't worry about special ed deficit, and I don't worry about ESL, because we have the ability to capture those back. But the structural deficit affects spending authority, and that becomes a concern because we cannot go negative on spending authority.
Thank you.
And yes, you say you don't lose sleep on it. That's good. But But one of the frustrations is we can't plan ahead like with the special ed specifically. We can't levy more knowing because it changes, but we always can go back, and that's what we do.
We can, the rules on the cash reserve are really kind of funky.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it limits you to you can levy enough cash reserve equal to the amount of getting you up to 20% of your expenditures from the year before. So when we levied 6.7% or 6.7 million for FY19, that was based on getting us up to 20% of the FY17 amount. That's why next year we can levy 8.6, I think it's about 8.6. That gets us to 20% of the FY18. And so when we get to FY21 based on FY19, it'll start coming down. But the problem is that the statute limits you. So once you get up there, it says you can't levy anymore. You're at the maximum. So what happens? Your special ed deficit, your ESL deficit starts bringing your fund balance down. And it starts keep coming down. Then you have to start the process over and levy, and then you get up there, and so it's really kind of funky.
Exactly.
All right. Every year after we certify our budget, the state does make some changes to our budget. This year they were very minor. The estimate for the instructional support levy is always just that, an estimate. It's based on how many schools participate in it. And since the state allocation is still technically in statute, it's still built into the aid and levy formula, and then every year when they don't appropriate for it, they have to back that off. So when they went through that math and all the schools participated, our instructional support levy went up $875. 866 from regular property taxes and 9 from utility replacement. And that resulted in our tax rate going up 0.00032 cent. So not even close to a penny. Then the other thing is that they have consistently reduced the amount of funding available to the AEAs. While this flows through our budget, it doesn't directly affect our budget because it isn't revenue that really goes through us. I have to record it as such, so every year I record the revenue and record the expenditure, but that's the only thing it affects our budget. And the main reason that they do that is that the AEAs are funded in the same way school districts are. It's a combination of state aid and property taxes, but rather than the state telling the state sending the state revenue to the AEA and then telling each school district to send their little portion of property taxes, they send all of it to the AEA, and then they reduce our property taxes on the back end through the aid and levy worksheet. It doesn't affect us in any way, but they just send them all the money and then basically keep our portion of the property taxes. So there was a reduction of $134,934 to the AEA. You see that in both the revenue and the expenditure. Has no net effect on our budget, although I always say that it could affect the services received from the AEA because we do depend on their services, and when they reduce their revenues, that affects us indirectly. Well, those are the only two changes from the budget. Any questions? The only other thing that you might have noticed is, and you'll see that in July too, is really not much financially happens in July and August. Most of what happens financially in July and August ends up in June. So all the teachers' salaries and benefits, all of the non-12-month salaries and benefits basically that we pay out in July and August are accrued back to June. Almost all of our revenue that come in July and August is accrued back to June. So that's why you see very little coming through. The only thing you really see coming through the budget as far as expenditures are for the 12-month offices, so which would be the central office and plant operation and maintenance. And then we have just a little bit of revenue from people paying tuition fees and so forth during the summer. All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for putting this all together for us and keeping us up to date on where we are financially. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, we will go ahead and move on to the consent items. Oh, pardon me, I just skipped public forum and I did not mean to, and I think we have a name on here. Yes, we do, Karen. There she is.
Thank you. Good evening. Just quickly wanted to ask if we could update our committee meetings. For instance, our facility meetings hasn't met since the end of February according to our website. Policy hasn't met since the end of January, and I believe that you've met. But can we get back in order of things and also be able to put that on our website? So when we click on all events, it will tell you which meetings are coming up so we can plan for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Now we will go ahead and move on to consent items.
The first item, minutes from the meeting held September 11th, 2018, personnel report, claims and payroll for August 2018, June, July, and August financial reports, gifts to the district, including Ames Home Builders Association, Fresh Time Farmers Market, Harlan and Barbara Hansen. Also, open enrollment requests, an agreement with Children's Theater for 2 performances during the 2018-19 school year.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Moved by Bacon, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Thank you. Our first action item tonight is the request for modified allowable growth and supplemental aid for special education deficit.
I move the board approve the request for modified allowable growth and supplemental aid for the special education deficit for the 2017-18 fiscal year.
I second.
It's been moved by Rosser, seconded by Beerbaum. Discussion. Chris, you alluded to this just a little bit, but just for the benefit of the public, can you explain what we are doing on this item and the next item, just so people are clear what these are?
Sure, and it's basically the same explanation, so I'll use it for both. So for both special ed services and for ESL services, we are required to provide whatever level of services is required to meet either the needs through the IEP for special ed or for ESL students, regardless of the amount of funding that we get. So when you have services that cost more than what our funding is, it creates a deficit in those programs. And so then on the back end, the state allows us to recoup the spending authority, because with Iowa schools, spending authority is almost as important as cash. So they say you spend more, we don't give you the money, but we'll let you have the spending authority on the back end, and then you can levy cash to recoup that. So that's the case for both programs. In this particular case, the special ed deficit actually went down a little bit. Darcy was glad to hear that. It went down by about $43,000. There was a couple reasons why the special ed deficit went down a little bit. We collected about $200,000 more in tuition in receipts and about $200,000 more in Medicaid receipts. We also had a fairly large district court place claim this year, which we don't always have, so that's more of a one-time money. But between those 3 revenue sources, we should have seen a fairly large increase in our deficit because we only got 1.1% allowable growth last year, and expenditures are increasing by more than that, and the staff we've had to add for special ed because of our enrollment. But we actually had a little decrease in the deficit.
I'd like to add to that also that and for people to understand that it's not an action that the board didn't take in funding this properly. This is just the ability of us to recoup those expenses. So,
any comments or questions? We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Item 14 Request to School Budget Review Committee for Modified Allowable Growth for Limited English Proficiency.
I move the board approve the request to the School Budget Review Committee for modified allowable growth for LEP allowable costs in the amount of $373,656.96.
Second.
Moved by Bacon, seconded by Perez. Discussion.
I apologize, I didn't remember the right amount.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Thank you. Item 15, approval of the new Ames High School schematic design.
I move the board approve the schematic design as presented.
I second.
Moved by Deerdorf, seconded by Beerbaum. Discussion or questions? Seeing no questions, I'll just take this opportunity to thank OPN and Story for the work that you've laid out for us. We had a very thorough discussion about this 2 weeks ago, and you really answered a lot of questions, and we appreciate the time that you worked through us in helping us as we look to move to the next phase of design development. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Thank you. Items from the board.
I have a couple of things. To answer Karen's question for TLC, Teaching and Learning Committee, we are meeting October 3rd at 12:30 till 2 p.m. And we'll be meeting, that's going to be our meeting time the first Wednesday of every month. Second thing that I wanted to share with the board is we all wear many hats in our community, and one of the hats that I wear in the community is I am part of the Ames Pride Board, and they are having the Ames Pride Fest this weekend, and I just wanted to point to events that they relate to school. At 2:30 at the Dance Floss Room, it's an event is called Meets Ames Middle School Prism, and that's the LGBTQIA middle school group. And at 2:30 in the Rotary Room, it's you get to meet the Spectrum, which is the high school group. So I just want to invite the board and the public, and there's a lot of, it's the whole day. It's Saturday, September 29th. So it's this Saturday.
I'd like to take a moment to thank the Director of Special Education, Darcy Cousins. She took myself and Director Beerbaum on a tour of Beloit, and it was really interesting to be able to see this other school that we provide education to some of the most vulnerable students in our community. And it was really lovely to see the partnership that the ACSD has developed with Beloit. It was really nice to see Darcy in that role. I didn't think I knew she was a principal, so it was neat to see that experience. And just to see how well it appeared that our students' needs were being met, even though I know that resources are always limited, but that it was certainly a place for students who needed it. So I wanted to thank you for that. It was really, it was a wonderful opportunity, and I hope that other board members are also able to go and see it.
Thank you for visiting.
I forgot. Taste of Education this Sunday, 5:30. I think it is.
Is it 5:30?
Yes, it's happening.
I just want to take a moment to publicly thank Lisa for being president this past year. And until you're in that role, many don't understand the toll it takes, but then also the leadership it requires to lead our district. And I think she's done a masterful job this last year. I just want to thank her for that, and just to really appreciate her stepping up to take that on.
Thank you. A couple things that I want to say. We had an opportunity, Luke and I did today, to present to Ames Noon Rotary about the high school. Very well received, and a great opportunity to field more questions and understand where concerns or desires for more information lie within the community. So I've already told the steering committee we've got a couple questions to bring back to them, but just really a great opportunity to get out to hear from. I don't know how many were in attendance. They said there could be 150, but I think that's more than, I don't think it was that high. But then we also last week got to speak to the Leadership Ames class that Jenny is a part of, and it's a group of professionals across the community that through the chamber that they put on, and it's a day they do every year that they tour a couple of our different schools, and then we have a panel. Spence joined us this year, a little unique having Jenny in the class and we were presenting, but she did help us answer a few questions, so we really appreciated it. But just a couple of great opportunities for us to meet with community members and to continue to talk about the work that we're doing. I also want to address Karen Stein. I apologize because we should have an update on committees, board committees on this agenda, and we don't. And how on earth we missed that? So we will get that on because the Equity Committee has met, TLC is going to be meeting, and so we will get that on for our next meeting. So we appreciate that being called to our attention. Any other things?
One thing I wanted to say, just having approved the schematic design, I thank the staff in Ames for all the input they gave. I think it was awesome. It showed in the stuff that OPN was able to give us. And I really encourage the staff, any staff watching or any staff that here, to, as the design phase is going, keep providing that input because we really want to know what you want. It doesn't matter what I want in the high school. It matters what the teachers and the staff want. So I really want to hear more of that.
Items from the superintendent.
Well, last week I got to go to IASB, yet another financial class, and it was wonderful and lots of information again. And so in hearing Chris talk about some of these items, the Iowa system is starting to make more sense. So I appreciate that. Also OPN, I cannot say enough about OPN and Story and the amount of support and their ability to really communicate with us effectively and the community as a whole. So I've gotten to have the opportunity, I guess, to work with different contractors and architects in my years, and by far they exceed any that I've ever worked with. So I'm just so thrilled with that. The other thing, I was just going to talk about Leadership Ames, and this session was really focused on schools. And so we visited Gilbert and we visited some schools in our district as well. We went to Northwood, and that was adorable. I mean, they were coming in as we were having a presentation from Kristen, and she did an excellent job. Darcy was there, so thank you for that too. And then Spence took us on a tour of the high school, and we had some students, our business students, present to the group, and they were phenomenal. They amazed me. So very, very productive day. And then on Saturday, I got to visit with one of our community groups, and they reported on a session or some sessions last year called Tell Your Truth, and it gave us some information about some of the some of the marginalized or groups or feelings of people who have not had a voice. And so it was really, really productive and interesting for us to walk away with a list. So I appreciate their ability to make that into one condensed list instead of my notes that I scratch out. And then I just wanted to give an update. I've talked a lot on mental health, and I think Anthony and I are kind of in the process of looking at new partnerships for providing mental health services in our school. So that'll be kind of an ongoing project for us over the next few months, but we are in the process of working on that.
How about the board planning calendar?
I'm happy to say we get to remove one work session because we're going to have it tonight. So October 1st, we had a work session that we will, and it was not on a board meeting night. So we are able to eliminate that by having that work session tonight.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
A second?
Moved by Bankins, seconded by Beerbaum. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. We will reconvene in 2 minutes. How's that sound? For our annual meeting.